This is Mission Control Houston. Based on the last report from Sergey Ryzhikov, everything going very well on board the Soyuz MS-17. The next major event coming up in about 11 minutes, the separation of the three sections of the Soyuz, as the descent module with the three crew members strapped inside will then fly free with its onboard computers targeting the landing site to the southeast of the town of Dzhezkazgan. This is an animation of the separation of those three sections. The orbital module and the instrumentation and propulsion module separate from the descent module that then enters the Earth's atmosphere, building up heat, repelling the heat through its heat shield before the deployment of a drogue chute and then the large main chute. We'll talk more about the physics of the chute deployment and the behavior of the Soyuz spacecraft once we get past module separation. Landing is still scheduled for 11:56 p.m. Central Time, 10:56 a.m. Kazakhstan time on Saturday morning. The weather reports indicate clear skies, very light winds, temperature around 64 degrees Fahrenheit. And with the completion of the deorbit burn a short time ago, the Russian Mi-8 helicopters are all airborne en route to the landing site. This is all very carefully choreographed and timed so that the helicopters arrive in a circular racetrack pattern around the landing zone shortly before the arrival of the Soyuz under its chutes. The separation of the three sections of the Soyuz will occur at an altitude of about 87 miles. All done by automatic commanding from the onboard computers, firing pyrotechnics to enable the three sections to separate from one another. In the center section or descent module, Soyuz Commander Sergey Ryzhikov flying under the call sign of Favore. In the center seat, flanked on his left by Sergey Kud-Sverchkov and on his right by Kate Rubins. The landing site coordinates calculated by the Russian flight control team in Korolyov call for the Soyuz to be targeting a landing spot at 47.2 north, 69.3 east.
The pressure helmets are sealed, and the the avionics are activated. Is that correct? And you have the Rus handle in your hands, correct?
So visors are now down for the 3 crew members and the descent module of the Soyuz MS-17. Some 6 minutes away from the expected separation of the modules. Countdown clocks here in Mission Control in Houston ticking backward toward the expected landing time, just over 31 minutes from now.
Moscow Station. Separation of the modules is in 4.5 minutes. Copy, favor.
So a bit of continuing communications confirming the expected time for the module separation, around 11:29 p.m. Central Time.
Our push to talk button is depressed, and the transmit button is released. Copy. Favore, how do you read us?
Again, these intermittent communications between the Soyuz and the Russian Mission Control Center expected. This is a nominal occurrence because of the distance the Soyuz is away from VHF communications capability from the International Space Station as it prepares for module separation. We're about a minute or so away from the anticipated time for module separation. Russian search and recovery forces airborne en route to the landing site southeast of Dzhezkazgan. Everything continuing to go smoothly. The reports now in from the Russian Mission Control Center that module separation has occurred on time. The Soyuz descent module with the 3 crew members strapped in their seats in their Sokol launch and entry suits are barreling toward the landing site southeast of Dzhezkazgan. The next major event some 3 minutes from now, when the vehicle enters the Earth's atmosphere at an altitude of 100 kilometers. Once the Soyuz approaches the landing site some 15 minutes before touchdown, there is a intricate parachute deployment sequence that is triggered by a barometric pressure sensor when the vehicle is about 41,000 feet above the ground. At that point, the main parachute cover is first jettisoned by pyrotechnic devices and springs. This will pull out a pair of extraction chutes, which in turn pulls out the drogue chute, which in turn pulls out the main parachute. It takes about 20 seconds for all of this to happen. When the atmospheric pressure that is measured around the Soyuz reaches the proper levels, a barometric pressure sensor starts a timer that triggers most of the remaining events in the landing sequence. At an altitude of about 18,000 feet off the ground, commands are issued to jettison the heat shield and to open valves to vent hydrogen peroxide, fuel for the entry control thrusters, and oxygen in the life support system tank. If we're fortunate enough to get video of the Soyuz under the chutes, we may be seeing that white smoke that is the venting, the normal venting of hydrogen peroxide and oxygen into the air, so that the vehicle can be safed for landing without an abundance of hazardous gases remaining in the tanks when the soft landing thrusters fire just milliseconds before touchdown. The Soyuz now beginning to enter the Earth's atmosphere. This will mark the first effects of Earth's gravity against the bodies of the 3 crew members for the first time in 185 days. We're inside 23 minutes until the anticipated touchdown of the Soyuz on the steppe of Kazakhstan to wrap up a 78.4 million mile mission.
Unintelligible.
The three crew members in the descent module of the Soyuz MS-17 should be seeing the first effects of plasma, the fireball building around the spacecraft, where temperatures rise to about 2,500 degrees, ablated by the Soyuz heat shield. The Soyuz computers also providing entry guidance to fine-tune the path of the spacecraft toward the landing site on the steppe of Kazakhstan. The spacecraft and the crew members should be emerging from this plasma regime in about 3.5 minutes or so.
Favore, Super Moskwy.
Favore, MCC Moscow.
Flight controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center attempting to contact the Soyuz, but as expected, communications not expected to provide a response as the Soyuz descends in the heat peaking regime during its entry back to Earth. Touchdown expected about 18.5 minutes from now.
Favore, Super Moskwy.
Favore, MCC Moscow.
The Soyuz spacecraft should be emerging from this plasma regime about a minute from now, and as it approaches the landing site, communications should be established through the search and recovery forces in the Antonov 26 fixed-wing aircraft around the landing zone, serving as a command and control relay station.
Фаворуется по Москве.
Favore, MCC Moscow.
Фавору, слышим вас.
Favore, we copy you.
Вид спуска.
Вид спуска АУС. Вход пассажира 043433. Перелетный пробок 9 секунд.
Принято. Плюс 9 секунд.
We confirm atmospheric re-entry with a plus 90
Сигнал 10.
Miss.
Принято. Самочувствие.
Отлично.
Давление веса.
10. How are you feeling? Great. What's the pressure?
Принято. 772.
It is 772. Copy. 772 is the SAP pressure. What's the max G load?
Максимально была 3,8.
It was 3.8.
3,95 оставить.
Принято. 3,95.
Maybe 395. We copy. 395.
Плюс уменьшается.
Проверьте БД, чтобы ничего не помешало
Please make sure that the ODF procedures are secured. And once the seats are primed, make sure that you put the translation and the rotational hand controllers in the corresponding position. Discrete number is about 1 and integer 0.1 and the integer is 10. Plus 10. Affirmative. Plus 10.
This is Mission Control Houston. Almost like clockwork, communications reestablished between Mission Control in Korolyov and Sergey Ryzhikov, the Soyuz commander. The crew now out of the plasma regime. Atmospheric entry was a nominal occurrence, and we're standing by now for the opening of the parachutes, the command to begin the parachute deployment sequence. Time to touchdown, about 14.5 minutes.
Please tighten your shoulder straps.
Thirteen and a half minutes until touchdown. Parachutes should have been commanded to deploy by now. This is Mission Control Houston, 12 minutes until touchdown of the Soyuz MS-17 on the steppe of Kazakhstan. We fully expect that the chutes have been deployed by now, although we're still awaiting confirmation of that from the crew or telemetry. This is Mission Control Houston, and there it is, Soyuz MS-17 under its main parachute. And as we described before, the white smoke is the nominal venting of hydrogen peroxide and oxygen into the atmosphere right on time, right on schedule, with landing planned about 10 minutes and 50 seconds from now. Reports now from the landing site from the Antonov 26 Command and Control flying aircraft indicate that the crew is in great shape. They've reported everything is nominal on board the Soyuz.
The value inaudible. Don't worry, this is not a fire. Favor?
Descending through a cloudless sky on a Saturday morning in Kazakhstan, Soyuz MS-17 with Rubins, Ryzhikov, and Kud-Sverchkov aboard, now 9.5 minutes from touchdown.
Are you ready? Yes. 4.5 is the altitude on the info panel. One more time. 5 minutes passed. Let's do it one more time.
Less than 9 minutes until touchdown. The Soyuz altimeter soon to be activated to measure the distance between the Soyuz and land and the rate of descent. All that information being fed into the Soyuz computers that will trigger the soft landing engines firing just milliseconds before touchdown.
Okay. Forward, the descent is in progress. Pressure is 411. COS 0405. Copy. Altitude 3890.
The beeping sound you hear is a radio beacon on the Soyuz spacecraft that is relaying its position back for telemetry on the ground. The Soyuz very stable. The winds are virtually non-existent on the ground at the landing site, according to the latest reports.
Put on the kneecaps.
Russian Mi-8 helicopters with the search and recovery forces and the embedded NASA personnel are now circling the landing zone, preparing to touch down in sequential fashion within minutes after the Soyuz lands. Those search and recovery forces maintaining good two-way communications with the crew on board.
Altitude 500 meters. Control altitude. Standing by for landing. Stopwatches are on. Just relax.
Everything's nominal.
Copy.
In the descent module, the three crew members have cocked their seats in the landing position, tightened their straps against their Sokol launch and entry suits just a bit tighter as they prepare for touchdown.
We confirm the maneuver and
300 difference as 60 meters.
Unintelligible meters. Copy.
Copy, thank you. We're ready.
Sandwiched between the launch of a Soyuz vehicle and next week's launch of a SpaceX Crew Dragon vehicle, Soyuz spacecraft is minutes away from touchdown on the steppe of Kazakhstan.
Past 1,500 meters.
One of the Russian Mi-8 helicopters now in view. That is the foreshadowing of you're being able to see the horizon shortly.
Copy. And
Copy, I confirm 1,000 meters.
Just 1,000 meters off the ground. Some 2.5 minutes until touchdown.
Copy, 800. Copy, 700. Copy. 500 meters. Crew, get ready for landing.
Just over a minute until touchdown, everything looking good. Touchdown confirmed at 11:55 p.m. Central Time, 12:55 a.m. Eastern Time, 10:55 a.m. in Kazakhstan on a Saturday morning. After 185 days in space and a mission spanning 2,960 orbits of the Earth and 78.4 million miles, Kate Rubins, Sergey Ryzhikov, and Sergey Kud-Sverchkov are back on terra firma. At this point, the Russian Mi-8 helicopters with the search and recovery forces in tow will begin to descend one by one. First to erect an inflatable medical tent nearby the capsule, and then begin the process of extracting the crew. A view of the landing site about 91 miles to the southeast of the town of Dzhezkazgan, Kazakhstan. Russian Mi-8 helicopters circling the landing zone where the Soyuz MS-17 touched down about 3 minutes or so ago at 11:55 p.m. Central Time, 12:55 a.m. Eastern Time on Saturday, as the Soyuz MS-17 is back on Earth with Kate Rubins, Sergey Ryzhikov, and Sergey Kud-Sverchkov. Confirmation now being received from the search and recovery forces that the Soyuz MS-17 landed upright. So the crew will be extracted from the top hatch on the Soyuz once a ladder is erected alongside the spacecraft. Again, you can see 3 of the Russian Mi-8 helicopters on the ground to begin the process of erecting this inflatable medical tent, to which the crew members will be brought inside following their extraction from the vehicle, and a few minutes to sit in chairs to get their land legs back a bit once they are pulled out of the spacecraft. This is Mission Control Houston. Once again, the Soyuz MS-17 landed at 11:55 p.m. Central Time, 12:55 a.m. Eastern Time, about 91 miles to the southeast of Dzhezkazgan, following a normal, uneventful entry. All of the entry sequence of events went by the book as planned. The 3 crew members in the descent module of the Soyuz, following the undocking earlier this evening from the International Space Station. They are back on Earth awaiting their extraction. Compliments of the search and recovery forces, whose Russian Mi-8 helicopters are now landing one by one to move their way toward the spacecraft and begin the process of getting the crew out, putting them in chairs near the capsule itself so that they can have an opportunity to get their land legs back a bit before they're carried in their chairs inside the inflatable medical tent to get out of their SOCO launch and entry suits and into more comfortable clothing for medical testing. The 3 crew members then will be flown by helicopters some 2 hours and 15 minutes to the staging city in Karaganda, Kazakhstan, where the crew members will split up. Rubins boarding a NASA plane to fly back to Houston, with Ryzhikov and Kud-Sverchkov boarding a Gagarin cosmonaut training aircraft to fly back to their training base and their homes in Star City, Russia, just outside of Moscow. With us on a satellite phone from the landing site is NASA Public Affairs Officer Courtney Beasley. Courtney, you are down on the ground very quickly as well. Just within minutes of touchdown, we are looking at helicopters, not yet seeing TV of the spacecraft at the landing site, so fill us in on what you're seeing.
Rob, it's great to hear from you. As you said, I'm here at the landing site. There are still some helicopters touching down right now. It was an upright landing, and it looks like the crew has been waving to the personnel outside of the capsule. Our helicopter, the skies are as clear as they can get. We actually got a visual of the capsule 10 minutes before touchdown, and we were able to follow it from that planet mark all the way down to the ground. We were one of the first helicopters out, and I'm on the ground right now. They're putting the stand up, getting ready to extract the crew.
What was the flight like from your staging point in Dzhezkazgan to the landing site? At what point did you pick up the Soyuz, and how was the touchdown? Could you see the soft landing engines from your perspective?
Yeah, Rob, the skies are clear. The crew could not have asked for a more beautiful day to touch down here and breathe this fresh air here back on Earth for the first time in 185 days. Again, about 57 degrees here, clear skies. We got a visual of the capsule about 10 minutes before it touched down. We were able to follow the capsule all the way down to the ground. The capsule did have an upright landing. They have the stand around the capsule right now. They've opened it up, and they're ready to extract the crew. We expect that Commander Sergey Ryzhikov will be first out.
And we should be receiving a video from the landing site from the spacecraft here momentarily, and we now have video, Courtney, as we watch the search and recovery forces surrounding the spacecraft. Give us a play-by-play of what you're seeing.
Yeah, Rob, there are two personnel on top of the stand right now. They are waiting to open the capsule up. They're actually starting to put up this medical tent where the crew will go for medical evaluation after they are extracted and get an opportunity to sit in those chairs for a few minutes. So right now we're just standing by for them to open it up and start extracting the crew.
Hang in there with us, Courtney. We lost the video feed. We only had it for a moment, so keep providing us with what you're seeing as recovery developments unfold at the spacecraft.
No problem, Rob. They're wiping off the top right now. Again, we should just be a couple seconds away from opening up.
And once the three crew members are out of the spacecraft, I assume that they've put chairs up near the spacecraft itself. What will be the scenario and the sequence of events after that?
Yeah, Rob, they're actually setting those chairs up as we speak. Two of them are already on the ground, set up just a couple feet away from the capsule itself. These crew members will be carried out by one. At that point, they'll get to sit down, kind of catch their breath from that ride down. They'll get to make their first call back to Earth, whether it's to family or friends, get to tell them about their trip home back to Earth, and they'll sit there for a few minutes, get a chance to recuperate, and from there they'll head into the medical tents for further medical evaluation. In those chairs, they'll get their first medical evaluation as well.
The choreography of how the search and recovery forces deploy the helicopters and arrive at the timing that they do is always very stark to me. Give us your impressions. This is the first time you have been at a landing. Give us your impressions of how this all unfolded from your perspective.
Yeah, one thing to watch it on TV, completely another thing to be here in person. The second we got the visual of the capsule coming down, about 10 minutes down, I just had goosebumps, and those goosebumps have not gone away. It was so incredibly exciting. We were one of the first helicopters on the ground, and then some helicopters followed us. I was actually able to dial in before the last helicopter had touched down. And Rob, they're going to start extracting the crew now.
Keep providing us with your visuals, Courtney. We do not have TV at the moment. We're expecting it shortly, but keep us apprised as to what you're seeing, who is getting out first, and what they're doing with the crew.
Yeah, Rob, there's about 4 personnel on top of the stand right now that goes around the capsule. That stand has a ladder for the personnel to get up on, and it also has a slide in which they slide those crew members down one by one. At that point, the medical personnel is able to carry them over to those chairs we were just talking about, where they'll get their medical evaluation, be able to make those first calls from Earth, and be able to recuperate a little bit before heading over to the medical tent. It looks like some pictures are being taken right now before they extract the crew. But otherwise, it looks like we're just moments away from Commander Sergey Ryzhikov coming out.
What is the timeline and the sequence of activities after the crew makes its way into the medical tent for their initial evaluations?
Yeah, so after their field medical are complete, the crew will be carried over to the medical tent, which is a short distance away from where we are now. Those will conduct a more in-depth medical evaluation. The crew will also undergo a series of field tests. Kate Rubins, in particular, will undergo a test conducted by our human research program called Standard Measures. And that's just a set of measures taken after landing to characterize the effects of living and working in the microgravity environment. Once those tests are complete, the crew and personnel will head back to their designated helicopters. From there, they'll head to the airport in Karaganda, where Rubins will board the NASA plane back to Houston, and the cosmonauts will board their aircraft to return to their training base in Star City, Russia.
Courtney, hang in there with us. We're going to be coming back to you here momentarily. Just to recap, this is Courtney Beasley at the landing site, NASA Public Affairs Officer. She rode on one of the first helicopters from Dzhezkazgan earlier to the landing site where the Soyuz MS-17 touched down about 15 minutes ago at 11:55 p.m. Central Time, 10:55 a.m. Kazakhstan time at the landing site. It was a perfectly normal re-entry for Rubins, Ryzhikov, and Kud-Sverchkov. All of the entry sequence of events were by the book. Everything went normally. The separation of the modules, the deployment of the parachutes, and touchdown occurring actually about a minute earlier than had been predicted. Almost a bullseye touchdown with the Soyuz sticking the landing upright, which of course helps to facilitate the extraction of the crew. Courtney, what's going on there right now?
Yeah, Rob, it looks like those initial pictures have been taken, and it looks like they are moving down to extract their first crew member. There's about 4 personnel again on top of the stand around the Soyuz, and here we have it. Sergey Ryzhikov is now coming out. And some shaking hands, some high fives, and a lot of smiles on the top of that stand right now. He's turning around and giving the crowd a wave. So excited to be back home. And he's going down the slide right now. Again, the medical personnel right on the slide to carry him over to the chairs just a couple feet away. And they're starting the extraction for the second crew member as we speak. And Rob, in the medical chairs, they'll be seated in the same configuration that they rode home in their Soyuz on.
Courtney, we're standing by for the resumption of video from the landing site. And based on your report, Ryzhikov is out, and we'll be waiting for you to report on the next crew member to be extracted.
Yeah, Rob, we're just standing by waiting. It should just be a couple moments from now. Again, the medical personnel on top, ready to help extract and welcome these crew members home.
Courtney, sometimes at these landing sites, the locals who know as much about landing operations as almost the rest of us will show up to greet the crew members. Any sign of any locals?
No, Rob. Don't see any sign of any locals. That may just be due to the COVID-19 restrictions. And without video, you can't tell, but most people here do have on masks to follow those COVID-19 guidelines.
And we now have video from the landing site. We just caught a glimpse of Sergey Ryzhikov, and we're looking at the crew members being extracted and other technical personnel clambering at the very top hatch that you described a moment ago. Ryzhikov is smiling, being attended to by the usual complement of Russian search and recovery personnel.
Blood pressure, 94. Heart rate.
Ryzhikov having completed his second flight into space, 358 days on his 2 missions.
176, 111.
Ryzhikov served as the Expedition 64 commander before handing off command of the International Space Station on Thursday to Shannon Walker, the NASA astronaut who will herself be handing over command to Aki Hoshide on April 27th after Hoshide arrives on board on the SpaceX Crew Dragon vehicle, which is scheduled for launch next Thursday.
And if you're looking at Sergey Ryzhikov from the front, our NASA personnel are to the left of him, ready to welcome Kate Rubins back home.
You're watching
Look at the top ledge.
live television from the landing site in Kazakhstan to the southeast of the town of Dzhezkazgan. Sergey Ryzhikov out of the Soyuz MS-17, awaiting the extraction of the other 2 crew members.
The crew commander. Parameters. Please do not.
On the right, carrying a bouquet of flowers, is cosmonaut Yuri Malenchenko from the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center. Presumably that bouquet of flowers to be handed to Kate Rubins after she's out of the Soyuz.
135 by 85.
And Rob, it looks like one of the personnel just went into the Soyuz to help the extraction process right now. And here's our second crew member.
Okay.
Rob, Kate Rubins is outside of the capsule right now, giving high fives and all smiles. And saying at Kate,
Here, right here.
welcome home. And here she comes.
And even 300 days in space on her 2 missions, Kate Rubins is home.
Rob, lots of laughs and smiles right now as Kate is coming down.
Let's slide down. Okay, here. Hold her and let's go.
And she's being brought over to her chair right now.
Okay.
Okay, Rob.
Press her.
Kate Rubins has been seated in her chair.
Sit down.
Again, all smiles
Great.
from both Rubins and our NASA personnel. And Kate Rubins now receiving flowers. A beautiful bouquet.
Yuri, thank you. Thank you.
Yuri Malenchenko handing Rubins that bouquet of flowers. On the left of your screen is Rubins' flight surgeon, Dr. Natasha Cho. On the right is a Russian nurse, Roxana Batsmanova, who operates every landing operation as one of the complement of NASA nurses.
And Rob, we just asked Kate how her ride down was, and she said, quote, "It was awesome."
Please step back.
So Rubins and Ryzhikov now out of the Soyuz, just waiting for Kud-Sverchkov.
Sergey, please move over there.
And Kate Rubins just realized Drew Morgan was here, so that was also a good reunion.
On a placid Saturday morning on the steppe of Kazakhstan, Sergey Kud-Sverchkov about to be extracted.
What? Pressure? No, oxygen. Oxygen 95.
And Kud-Sverchkov is now out.
The measurements are being taken, and I will give it to you right away.
Rob, again, these chairs are where the crew will sit for a short time for their first set of medical evaluations, and they'll also be able to make their first phone call from back here on Earth. This is also a period of time for their equilibrium to get readjusted to gravity after living and working in space.
Okay, you ready?
And Kud-Sverchkov is now being carried over to his chair. So all three crew members now extracted and seated.
Flight surgeon is taking measurements.
trying to be on this side of things. We've been waiting. It's awesome to see that. Holy cow, that was level.
Television continues to come in from the landing site where just 30 minutes ago the Soyuz MS-17 crew, the Expedition 64 trio of Kate Rubins, Sergey Ryzhikov, and Sergey Kud-Sverchkov landed upright in their Soyuz vehicle to complete their 185-day mission. You just caught a glimpse a moment ago of the nearby inflatable medical tent, the orange tent, that they will be carried into a few moments from now to begin medical tests before boarding individual helicopters for about a 2-hour, 15-minute flight back to the staging city of Karaganda.
Okay.
Courtney, I think we have you reestablished now. Tell us what the scene is looking like at the landing site.
Dr. Rob, well, as you know, all 3 crew members now in their seats. Kate Rubins having conversation with the NASA personnel on the side. Again, she said that her ride home was awesome, and she just said that it's really beyond the side of things. So we're excited to do home. I know she had a great time living and working aboard the International Space Station. Again, they'll stay in these chairs for their first set of medical evaluations before being carried over to the tent. And Kate Rubins is now on the phone making her first call from back here on Earth.
Is Mom there?
Kud-Sverchkov, having completed the first mission in his career of 185 days that included a spacewalk last November with Sergey Ryzhikov outside of the Pouso module that served as an airlock for the first time for a Russian spacewalk. That Pouso module was the departure point earlier this evening for the Soyuz MS-17.
Not everybody's here yet.
And Courtney, even in the remote steppe of Kazakhstan, there's always time for a photo opportunity.
Okay. One more picture of the crew commander.
We should be seeing the crew hoisted in those chairs to be brought into the medical tent momentarily. For those just joining us, the Soyuz MS-17 landed at 11:55 p.m. Central Time, 12:55 a.m. Eastern Time, about 34 minutes ago. Russian Mi-8 helicopters carrying members of the search and recovery forces quickly landed in sequential fashion, one by one, on a perfectly clear morning on a Saturday morning on the steppe of Kazakhstan to the southeast of the town of Dzhezkazgan, to begin the extraction of the crew one by one. Ryzhikov was first out, followed by Kate Rubins, and then Sergey Kud-Sverchkov. And you can see the crew members now being raised in the chairs to be brought to the nearby medical tent. Courtney, we see Ryzhikov signing his spacecraft. Give us a quick glimpse as to what's going on.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, Rob, the group just took a big group photo with all of the personnel from Roscosmos and from NASA. Again, from here, the crew will be carried into the medical tent for further medical evaluation. After those evaluations are finished, the crew and personnel will head back to their designated helicopters, and they'll head to the airport in Karaganda, where Rubins will board the NASA plane back to Houston, and the two cosmonauts will board their aircraft to return to their training base in Star City, Russia. So, Rob, with the crew now headed into the medical tent for further medical evaluation, that will wrap up my report from the field. Rob, it's been an absolute honor to be here at this landing representing NASA Public Affairs, and we're all looking forward to seeing you back in Houston. Rob, back to you.
Thank you very much, Courtney, and have a safe trip back to Houston. We'll look forward to seeing you and hearing more about your trip. As we lost our television feed just a moment ago, you saw Kate Rubins being carried toward the inflatable medical tent, following Sergey Ryzhikov, the Soyuz commander, signing the outside of the descent module with the date of landing. That has now become a tradition for returning Soyuz crews. The three Soyuz crew members are now inside the inflatable medical tent at the landing site, just a few feet away from the descent module that touched down in perfect fashion at 11:55 p.m. Central Time, 12:55 a.m. Eastern Time, to wrap up the 185-day mission of Kate Rubins, Sergey Ryzhikov, and Sergey Kud-Sverchkov. There will be a period, as you heard from Public Affairs Officer Courtney Beasley, a period of medical testing inside the medical tent, after which the crew members will board individual helicopters for a flight back to the staging city of Karaganda, where they will split up, Rubins boarding a NASA plane for a flight back to Houston, and Ryzhikov and Kud-Sverchkov boarding a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft for a flight back to Star City, Russia, and their training base just outside of Moscow. This is Mission Control Houston. The successful landing, the very smooth and uneventful landing of the Soyuz MS-17 has brought Kate Rubins, Sergey Ryzhikov, and Sergey Kud-Sverchkov back to Earth after 185 days in space, a 78.4 million mile mission. Everything went perfectly throughout the course of the night, from hatch closure through undocking, through the deorbit burn and all of the entry sequence of events that resulted in an upright landing for their descent module, a bullseye landing about 91 miles to the southeast of the town of Dzhezkazgan. The crew is out of the Soyuz. They're in the nearby medical tent, getting out of their Sokol launch and entry suits, having an opportunity to receive initial medical testing before they board respective helicopters to fly back to the staging city of Karaganda, Kazakhstan, where they will split up, with Rubins returning to Houston on a NASA plane, and Ryzhikov and Kud-Sverchkov returning to their training base in Star City, Russia, outside of Moscow. This is one of a continuing series of events in one of the busiest periods in International Space Station, if not human spaceflight history, where 14 astronauts and cosmonauts are coming and going from the station on 4 different spacecraft over a 3-week period. Next up is next Thursday's launch of the Crew 2 astronauts on board a SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft, led by spacecraft commander Shane Kimbrough on the right of your screen, Megan MacArthur, the Dragon pilot, on the left, and the multinational crew rounding out Thomas Pesquet of the European Space Agency and Aki Hoshide of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. They are scheduled to launch from Launch Pad 39A at the Kennedy Space Center next Thursday, April 22nd at 6:11 a.m. Eastern Time, with NASA TV coverage beginning at 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Docking scheduled 1 week from today, actually from Friday, in the early morning hours, to bring the station crew temporarily to an 11-person crew. So we'll be following all of the countdown activities throughout the week, with a series of briefings throughout the week from the Kennedy Space Center leading up to their launch next Thursday morning. In the meantime, you can follow and recap all of the events from this evening on the NASA television video file that's coming up Saturday morning at 4:30 a.m. Central Time, 5:30 a.m. Eastern Time, that will recap all of the activities associated with the return to Earth of the Expedition 64 crew of Kate Rubins, Sergey Ryzhikov, and Sergey Kud-Sverchkov. The crew safely back on Earth, soon to be back home in Houston and in Star City, Russia. So we'd like to thank you for joining us throughout the course of the night tonight, and to follow all of the exploits of the expedition crews on board the International Space Station on www.nasa.gov. For now, have a great weekend. This is Mission Control Houston.